It might not look like much of a truck for one of our gitty big tests. There's no trailer and it's got small wheels. But that's the way this truck is meant to look. The FUSO Shogun FS2536 8x4 Super Low is set up for metro work. Low horsepower, low height, not too many frills, that's what makes it work. And what better example of this model to test than this Carr Haslam unit, used for New Zealand product development as it worked around the lower South Island, delivering swap gas bottles. Perfectly shows off the model's versatility in both open country and metro driving. I take over the steering wheel for my test drive in Oamaru to drive to Dunedin. The climb up into the cab is good, with 3 well-spaced, wide and deep enough steps, starting low to the ground, as this is a low-height spec truck. The climb is assisted by grab handles running up both sides of the doors. The driver's position has an air-suspended seat that I notice regular driver Steve has added some extra cushioning to, due to it being too hard for his liking. From the driver's position, the cab layout is simple yet on point. Everything is at your fingertips, or less than an arm's reach away. The main dash has rev, speedo, engine temp and AdBlue level gauges, with a digital display in the centre with various settings. The steering wheel and stalk setup is very similar to a Mercedes-Benz, a sign of Daimler's influence in these new FUSOs. The left side of the wheel has buttons to control the heads-up display settings, including adaptive cruise control distances and music. The right-hand side has cruise control, on and off, and hands-free phone functions. The right-hand stalk controls window wipers, indicators, and high beam. The left stalk has drive, neutral, and reverse, engine brake, and manual shifting controls. The main dash layout is not your full wraparound setup, but everything is nicely placed and not looking too busy or confusing. On the left is a 7-inch touchscreen media unit with Apple CarPlay. The centre console can only be described as boxy, giving the feeling of cocooning the driver in, but it does provide plenty of space for drivers' personal bits and pieces. There's plenty of adjustment in the seat and the steering wheel, but I do have to settle for a position that feels a bit unnatural, in order for the active attention assist monitor to be able to see my eyes. Necessary if it's to do its job and keep an eye on me for any signs of fatigue. If I set it up exactly as I'd like, the top of the steering wheel blocks the camera view. We did note this in the first test of these new Shoguns. As I get rolling through Oamaru, I find the mirrors to be great. They're not in a big shroud and have a good gap between the A-pillars and the mirrors in order to minimise blind spots at intersections and roundabouts. I test the cruise control in a metro environment and it works well, with very quick shifting, and on the steep hill, heading south out of town, it barely drops from my set speed, and at the top of the hill, the overrun is only a few kilometres. Very impressive. I don't get the opportunity to test the adaptive cruise control on this test, but I have in other drives of the new Shogun, and it works well. Out on the open highway, it's a nice drive, with air suspension on both steer axles. I do find a little side-to-side sway when the road camber changes, but it's minor. The axle loadings on this setup are as close to even as you could ever want, helping with the ride. It's a nice, quiet truck with a very smooth ride. My final test of the Shogun is the Kilmog Hill, heading into Dunedin. The 360 horsepower engine and 12-speed auto box have worked well together up until now, and I trust it to continue. Keeping it in non-eco mode to start with. The AMT is very conservative, taking probably one more gear than I would have in manual. Still, I'm happy with that. It doesn't like to get caught out like some older generation auto boxes. The slowest speed we get to is 40 km an hour in 7th, at the steepest point of the first climb. The box seems to like to keep the revs high, with downshifts at 1400 RPM and revving out to 2200 RPM before upshifting. That sounds high, but it really doesn't sound that way when you're in the cab. On the very steep run down the other side, the 3-stage engine brake works well, revving out to 2500 RPM with only light taps on the service brake needed. The engine and gearbox seem to handle all of this with ease, when at the last minute I try to trick it by putting the AMT into manual mode and letting it lug down to 1100, but quick enough it actually takes over and grabs a gear. Before the last drop down into Dunedin, I pull over to give Steve his truck back. It's been a memorable drive, more so than I expected. Seems that these new AMTs can't be caught out on New Zealand hills anymore. I'm about to hop out and walk around to check the mileage on the Teletrack Navman head unit and the left side of the windscreen, when I notice that it has the kilometres displayed down the side, so they're clearly read from the driver's seat. Nice touch. Easy.